I ask you, just following up on what Shamir asked you, as to what the role of the international organizations were in this whole process. Resolutions 30/1 issued in 2016 and 46/1 issued in 2021 were drawn up by the UNHRC to suggest that Sri Lanka work with external enmities like hybrid courts to promote accountability and reconciliation. This suggestion was sort of disregarded by Sabri and his delegation on the account that it was not pursuant to our constitution. What do you have to say about the role of the international organization when the response of our government is this?
Well, let's be very clear. 2015 resolution 30/1 was co-sponsored by the government of Sri Lanka. And that particular resolution has a mention of the involvement of foreign and Commonwealth judges in a justice mechanism. That resolution, when co-sponsored by Sri Lanka, the President and the Prime Minister, I assume, were on the same page, and the Prime Minister is now the President of Sri Lanka. So at that time, the then Prime Minister, who is now President, who is a lawyer, who knows his law very well, I think, agreed to this mechanism. They didn't see any constitutional bar at that time. And now for the government to say there is a constitutional bar raises a lot of questions. Did they realize something several years later, that there is a constitutional bar? And we have looked at this issue for several years, 7 years really, and there is no constitutional bar. There are procedural issues that will need to be done to ensure internationals can come and work in Sri Lanka. And there are also private members' bills that talk about foreign judges. I mean, I'm not even going into that. And that particular private members' bill was introduced by a particular member of this government. So they didn't see any problem having international involvement at those times. Now, we also need to ask the question, why was that language brought in with the government of the day agreeing to it? Was because the domestic mechanisms have failed. I mean, if anything that has come out of this panel, we have realized that there are no cases that have gone through the Sri Lankan justice system that has led to accountability. There are a handful, one including a massacre, but there was a pardon given by Gotabaya Rajapaksa for that particular case. So really justice has eluded the victims, and that's why that particular provision was brought in. There was also, and I want to be very clear, there was a consultation task force that went around Sri Lanka in 2016 and came out with a report, had consultations across Sri Lanka, in the south, in the north, in the east, in the west, where there was overwhelming support for a hybrid mechanism because there's no trust in the domestic the processes. So overall, there
when you speak about Bhavani, let me interrupt you there for a second. You speak about the efforts taken to go around the country, and this really clearly said that a hybrid solution is the way forward, right?
For the justice.
For the justice system. Yeah. What was the sample size?
There was 7,000 submissions made to the consultation task force.
So we're talking about 22 million people in the country, and we are talking about a sample size of 7,000.
Mm-hmm.
Not a reflection of what the sentiments of the people are.
You want to disregard the consultation task force, which I would say is problematic because that's a consultation. But continuous
7,000 people against 22 million, there seems to be a disparity.
Continuous commissions of inquiries appointed by successive governments have highlighted problems in the justice system, highlighted impunity in Sri Lanka. Now, if the domestic processes were working, why has no one been held accountable? Or in one case where accountability actually went through in the Miraswal massacre, why was that individual who was found
Bhavani,
guilty.
you hit the nail on the head.
No, Shamir, let me finish this.
Right.
Found guilty, Supreme Court affirmed the conviction,
Right.
and there was a pardon given. Now, in such a situation where justice eludes people, are you saying that we completely disregard the fact that there are failures,
Right.
which has led to the finding now that economic crimes are also a problem? Because why? Because there's impunity in Sri Lanka. If we continue to find excuses, if we continue to deny justice, we're going to go in the same cycle over and over again. So it's not an issue that we'll have to deal with now. It's an issue we'll have to deal with continuously.
So you hit the nail on the head.
May I just
Bhavani.
interrupt there for a second about, because I think lots of people will take this, so I want to correct this, is the sample size. Now, according to quantitative research methodology, the sample size to do a national survey is 1,300 for 22 million, right? So 7,000 in that is huge, because they use a certain method whereby they do a proper sampling according to region, sex, social strata, etc. So just to say that the 7,000 is actually massive.
Let's say 7,000 is massive.
Massive.
Yeah, okay, right,
massive.
massive.
But moving on.
Right,
yes.
moving on. So you hit the nail on the head. You said the domestic mechanism has not worked. Has the international mechanism worked?
What international mechanism?
So
What is
right
the
now,
international
every year we go to the UNHRC sessions. Now on Thursday we are going to have a vote. What does it do?
Yeah, but Shamir, we are coming back to the same point. What can the Human Rights Council do? It's not a sanctioning body. This is not. I mean, I think there is a misconception.
Right. What is the next step? Okay, now we go back again. Let's on Thursday, hypothetical. Let's say we are defeated. Okay. What happens then? The government of Sri Lanka is defeated. So we as a nation, we are also responsible, because we are also part and parcel of this 22 million people of the country. So when we speak about the government, this reflects us as well individually. So what will happen then?
Shamir, can I also be very clear?
Yeah.
I was in Geneva and I took a very different line to the government. So I'm not representing the government. The government is responsible to take action in Sri Lanka. But there were several of us who went and spoke, and we may be called traitors for speaking differently and having a different tune to the government.
You are entitled for your own opinion.
No, but I'm not responsible in terms of the line the government is taking. But the government is saying the same thing for the last 10 years that Sri Lanka has been before the council. That is, give us time, we will try our best, we'll look at domestic processes, nothing has worked. So the Human Rights Council can only work with a government that's genuinely interested in doing something right in the country. What this resolution will do is further particular things that were started last year, including evidence gathering. Now, evidence gathering, that particular provision is what is contested by this government. Why? Because they are worried that the evidence gathering could lead to accountability. That could actually one day hold particular individuals accountable. So you may not see direct implications now, but it has started a process. And why is the government that is in such economic crisis rushing to Geneva? I mean, the foreign minister and the justice minister were there in September. According to media reports, the foreign minister is there now. A country that is facing a severe economic crisis, why are they rushing to defend their record? Because they know this has started a process. It may not bring sanctions right now, but there's international attention on Sri Lanka. And the international attention on economic crimes and human rights and impunity raises alarm bells across the globe.
So Bhavani, what I want to praise the viewers who are watching the show tonight is the fact that the statement that was made by Minister Mahinda Samarsinghe when he was in charge of the human rights portfolio in the country. Now he is the ambassador to the United States of America as well. He spoke of a very important notion. He said, do not pelt stones by being inside glass houses. Now this is etched in my memory because this was a very significant statement and many individuals who witnessed this particular statement in question thought, oh, this is a true patriot speaking. Because there are a lot of human rights violations made by the United States as well. Let's take a look at, for an example, the killing of Osama bin Laden, going to another country, a sovereign state, and killing an individual. He may be a terrorist or not, but entering a sovereign nation with their security forces and killing an individual does ring alarm bells. We saw the manner in which how in Afghanistan, in Iraq, how US soldiers have sprayed as far as civilians are concerned, just because they've been shot to the air to celebrate weddings. There have been drone attacks. We witnessed all this. Isn't this hypocrisy itself?
You asked the same question last year, Shamir, when we had this debate about 46/1.
I probably might ask you this question.
Same question
years to come, years to
next
come
year
as well.
too. And I think you have a point. You know, there are countries which have questionable track record. But does that mean that you ignore violations that are happening across the world? Ongoing violations? I mean, there is also this debate, the government also has raised this, that 13 years after the war, why are we talking about what happened in the past? We have to look to the future. Sure, let's look to the future, but if you don't address the past, it's going to keep recurring.
So wounds that are left behind by the conflict has to heal.
And across the world, I am not defending any country here, but we're talking about Sri Lanka. We're talking about a country that continuously goes and makes promises, rhetoric, and doesn't deliver. And successive governments, I'm not just saying it's Ranil Wickremesinghe's government, successive governments. But it comes back to the point of individuals that are driving decision-making policy remain. They are never held accountable. So this may be a process that's happening in Geneva, but that speaks to a very, very deep and fundamental problem in Sri Lanka, that is impunity and accountability.
Mr. Jayasuriya,